Hello and welcome to Actual Tech Media's 2019 Enterprise Security MegaCast. On today's event, we're honored to be joined by SolarWinds, KnowBe4, PhoenixNAP, and Cloudflare. I'm James Green, and I'll be the moderator for today's event. I personally am passionate about innovative enterprise technology, as is the rest of the Actual Tech Media team, and that's the main reason that we created the MegaCast event series. We wanted to create a series that would help educate IT professionals like yourselves about what's out there, what is the most exciting technology solutions available today, and we also wanted to provide a forum where you have an opportunity to ask your questions and get those answered live by experts. And so we're going to do some of that today as well. And we wanted to do it in an online virtual experience so you never even have to leave the office to get all of this. So it's going to be an awesome event. While you're learning today, you're going to have a chance to win one of the sweet prizes that I'll be giving away. So make sure you pay attention for the announcements on the drawings for those. Now, before we kick into the Enterprise Security MegaCast today, there's a few things that you need to know about the event and how it's going to go. Today, you'll hear from 4 of the hottest companies in the enterprise security space. Each presenter will speak for roughly 20 minutes, and then we're going to do 3 to 5 minutes of live Q&A, and that's where you'll have the chance to ask those questions and get those answered by the experts. It's important that you understand that this event is not a competition. There's not going to be a winner selected here today. It's really meant to be educational, and to that end, and to make sure that it remains a positive and educational event, we've asked today's presenters to focus on specifically what differentiates their solution and what makes them unique and what makes their product special. Now, in a moment, I'm going to introduce you to Tom. He's an independent security expert who I've invited to help me shed some light on the state of enterprise security today. But before we get into that, I've got a few more housekeeping things to go over here. We're going to be around for a couple hours, I would estimate, and so I want to make sure that you've got a good idea of what's going to be going on here. First of all, prizes. I mentioned that earlier. Today, throughout the event, I'm going to be giving away a total of 5 Series 4 Apple Watches. I'm also going to be giving away $500 Amazon gift cards after each presentation. So make sure you're paying attention for those announcements. There are some specific requirements if you're selected for one of the prizes. First of all, you must be present on the live event to win. And if you're a grand prize winner, to be able to collect that prize, we're going to need to collect from you an IRS Form W-9. If you're a prize winner, we will reach out to you after the event via email, so be watching for that. We'll collect what we need, get the delivery of your prize arranged. Another thing is that you have the option, if you want it, to make a donation to charity instead of collecting that prize. Some people, lots of people in fact, have chosen that option, and we've been able to give lots of money to some great charities over the years. If you need any more information about the prizes, the full prize terms and conditions are available on actualtechmedia.com. Now, if you have questions during the event at any time, there's a Q&A panel here in the events console, and we encourage you to make liberal use of that and make sure that you get your questions in there so when we do the Q&A with the experts, we can ask them those questions for you. We'll also be asking some poll questions during the event, and we would really appreciate your responses to those poll questions because we use those to help inform the topics and subject matter of future events. So in the interest of developing more events that help you stay educated and get better at your job, and of course are entertaining for you, we love your feedback in those polls. We encourage you to promote the event on Twitter, help your friends find it, that kind of thing. You can do that right through the event console here. There's a little Twitter icon, and it'll pop in the event hashtag for you, which is Security MegaCast. Note that if you do use that little Twitter button, it's going to authenticate with Twitter. That information is kept between you and Twitter. The events console or Actual Tech Media is not collecting your credentials or anything like that. One more thing about the console. There are some handouts here in the console that today's presenters have provided for you. Definitely encourage you to download those and look them over. They'll provide some more information supplemental to what the presenters are going to be talking about. There are a couple more features in the little dock there. It's there to help you either share it, engage with us, what have you. So you can email the registration link to a friend there. with the email icon and help a colleague get in here and check out what we're doing. You can maximize the presentation window. So that's something I recommend that you do right now, in fact, is maximize the slides and the video window. That way, if somebody does a demo or is sharing an kind of intricate slide, you can see all those details better. So I always recommend maximizing that window. And if at any point you have trouble with the video or the audio or otherwise are having problems with the event console, I recommend refreshing, try a different browser. One of those two things usually fixes that problem. Now that we have all the housekeeping out of the way, it's time to get to the fun stuff. Before we get started with the presentations that will come from each presenter, I've invited my friend Tom Pohl, who is a security expert. He's the host of a popular security meetup here in town, and he's a force to be reckoned with in a good old game of capture the flag. Perhaps most importantly to this discussion, Tom has been responsible for IT systems at a SaaS company for nearly 2 decades, which I think is way longer than we've been using the term SaaS. And his perspective on enterprise security comes from both that experience over the last 17 years, I believe it is, managing enterprise security here, but also from being on the bleeding edge of security in meetups and online communities and at security conferences. And so, Tom, I'm super excited to welcome you to the Enterprise Security MegaCast.
Thanks for having me. I enjoy being here.
So I think that as IT practitioners, especially anybody who thinks about security, we've come around to the idea that protecting ourselves for the long term against being compromised is realistically, it's just not going to happen. At some point, we're going to be compromised. Yep. So we think about, okay, assuming we've been compromised, now how do we protect our systems? How do we keep data from being exfiltrated? Those kinds of things. I think we've come to terms with that, but I'm not sure that we've fully grasped just how bad the situation really is. So I'd like to start this discussion by asking you to scare us a little bit. Talk to us about the reality. How likely is it that we're going to be compromised, and how easy is that for a motivated attacker to do?
Yeah, so a motivated attacker today and age, they're the biggest way into most organizations now that there's firewalls, there's external penetration scans, things that a lot of organizations are doing. The biggest way in today is phishing, getting a user to interact with a bad guy, right? And sometimes it's not even your organization that's getting breached in order to have that way in. Like say, I'm emailing an outside organization, and in the footer of my email message, it's got my cell phone number in it, right? And that outside organization gets breached. Now I'm getting text messages claiming to be from the CTO of my organization asking me to go buy some Amazon gift cards for some coworkers and send them to them. Like, the reality of just how easy it is or how complex these attackers are getting in order to try to trick you into giving them money.
So the reality has been, and for the foreseeable future anyway, will continue to be, no matter how great your technology security people are, both your biggest vulnerability and your biggest challenge is to educate them and help them understand how to have good security hygiene and that kind of thing.
That's right. Yeah. Well, in any good organization now, you've got security awareness, right? You're phishing your employees. We send out phishing attacks against our own people regularly, so that you build that healthy skepticism, right? And yep. And the bad guys, they realize this, and so they'll attack. They're monitoring LinkedIn to see who just joined your organization that maybe isn't up to speed yet on all the training and so forth, so they can attack them as early as possible in kind of that life cycle of an employee.
How do you evaluate solutions as you're looking at things that you need in your company to be sure that, from a security standpoint, you feel like they're solid?
Yeah, so third-party vendor management is definitely a topic that is near and dear to my heart, right? So when I'm looking at products, typically, number one, I don't just look at one product, right? I'll look at the entire marketplace of those products, pick out the leaders, and then I put them through their tests, right? And not only do I evaluate them from the feature aspect, but from a security aspect. Like especially, in my area, I evaluate a lot of security products. I'm not happy with a product until I can put it through its paces, break it, So then I can evaluate how does the company deal with remediating any issues I find with their product. And I'll judge the organization based upon how well they respond. I'll do other things like look through change logs, right? Everybody's going to have their warts and their things that they've had to correct and fix. How open and upfront are they around looking at owning up to their issues and their problems?
Now, not everybody has the security expertise that you have to bring something into the lab and break it. What would you recommend for the average IT decision maker when it comes to making those decisions?
Yeah, so definitely, finding your group, right? Like every industry has kind of a support group, like a information sharing group or other, here in Des Moines, we've got SecDSM or Security Des Moines, where like-minded individuals around information security get together and bounce ideas off your peers, get lots of input from others that are able to put forth the effort into making and breaking these products, so that you can get a better shot at making a good decision around a good product.
So the big things are really just get into conversations, right? Get on Twitter, start having conversations, get in a local security meetup, get to all the security conferences you can, those sorts of things, just so you can start to have discussions with other people about it.
Because that's how we're in this together, right? Even here in Des Moines, there's 2 large competing gas station chains. Guess what? They both come to SecDSM because it's that whole rising tide raises all boats. Because if you make an industry hard for a bad guy to break in and compromise, their bad guys are going to go to a different industry. So if you've got 2 gas station chains that now it's hard to get into gas station chains in general, they're going to go to another industry.
Right.
So that's why even though they may be competitors in the marketplace, from a security aspect, you're on the same team. It's everybody versus the bad guys.
You told me a joke the other day. You said, hey, you know what the S in IoT stands for, right?
What do you mean? There's no S in IoT.
Security.
Oh.
So that's hilarious. And there's a lot of truth to it. I think, especially right now, kind of at the beginning of the IoT era, there's not a whole lot done from the vendor side on, especially consumer IoT devices, to account for security. I think for a lot of enterprises, that's going to be a problem. So how do we, in the next 3 to 5 years, as sensors and connected things become prevalent, how do we protect ourselves from all of the vulnerabilities those devices introduce?
Yeah, so definitely, we need to stop with buying the lowest cost item out there, honestly, and looking at a product and anytime a product comes with default credentials, it's gonna get popped. Admin password. It's gonna. Oh, we're just gonna hide it on the network. Nobody's ever gonna find this. That's not true, right? I play these games all the time. It's gonna be found. If you've got an IoT network, or IoT devices, and they're not on their own network, put them on their own network, because something's that has limited access. Because ultimately, what's going on today is some vendors they care deeply about security. They realize that, hey, these things are going out in the field and nobody's going to touch them, right? They're going to do their job, but then people don't you're not going to patch it because that's going to potentially cause downtime or outage, or they even forget about it. So looking at products that are doing automatic updates, so they're fixing themselves, that are checking in and being like, hey, I'm here, I'm not here, or hey, somebody's pounding on my door trying to get in. And those aren't going to necessarily be the lowest cost items, right? So if you've got 2 cameras on the market, one that's doing automatic updates, doesn't have default credentials, and one that's some no-name knockoff thing from China, stop buying the no-name knockoff from China, right? Get the devices that do care about security, because that's the only way that you're going to force market pressure, right? By having the consumers purchase things smarter.
So the idea that this stuff is not important, it's just a little sensor and it's not going to get found because nobody cares about it, is not going to hold up.
No, it's my pivot into your network.
Yeah, right? Some kid with Nmap will spend 5 minutes and know all about it, and now they're in.
Yeah. You take small organizations, that even mom pop organization that's got a simple DSL router, right? It'll have things like UPnP enabled by default. You add a little camera on the network that says, hey, firewall, open up this port to anybody in the whole world so they can come at me. And I guarantee you somebody's going to then come at it, pop that camera, and then use it as a pivot to go, compromise the rest of your organization. That's a thing today. And then bad guys, and then if you want, say you're a service provider, right, and your customers are only in the United States, be like, oh, cool, we'll just lock out all the rest of the world from being able to use my service. Well, the bad guys figure this out, and they're like, okay, we'll just rent time on pop to DVRs in Des Moines, Iowa, or wherever it is that you're allowing people to log in from, and use them as a proxy in order to get to your organization. So then they bypass geo restrictions. Like, it's bad, and people don't realize just how compromised home networks are, small business networks, and everything else.
A lot of IT decision makers are focused on lots of different parts of the IT business and don't necessarily spend all day thinking about security like some folks do. What sorts of things might they need to be thinking about that they're not already? What's kind of coming that we should be thinking about when it comes to enterprise security?
Well, always be learning, right? I can't say that I know everything, right? And nobody should feel like, if you feel complacent about where you're at, you're going to get hacked next. So it's like, take a humble approach, right? And recognize that there's all sorts of people out there, and the next great idea could come from a location that you didn't see coming, right? Keep talking to your people. You know what? Your people are a great asset. They may be a huge liability in terms of clicking on stuff, but they're also a huge asset in terms of coming up with ideas. We do hackathons. We do all sorts of things where, we ask people in our organization, how can we be better? How can we do better, right? That's all we can do is constantly be looking at ourselves, be talking to people in our organization, and be like, what do you see? What do you think we can do better that, simple things that it can help and make us be a better organization.
Tom, I'm so grateful that you were willing to take some time to talk with me and our audience today. If people want to connect with you on Twitter or forums or something, how can they get a hold of you?
If you want to find me pretty much anywhere, I'm Tom Pohl, TOMPOHL, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, wherever you find me. Yeah, you can find me pretty much anywhere.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Tom. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our first presenter.
All right. Destiny, Jim, are you guys there?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. We're here.
Very good. Thanks for joining us today. Go ahead and take it away.
All right. Well, I am Destiny Bertucci with SolarWinds, and Jim Hansen is on the line as well, and we're going to introduce ourselves a little bit further on. But we wanted to get dived in, especially with this Enterprise Security MegaCast, on Access Rights Manager from SolarWinds. If you guys are familiar with SolarWinds, you know that we have been one of the trusted brands out there that, are there for you as an IT infrastructure, period. So security just kind of isn't aligned. So we just wanted to kind of bring with you a little bit with style what Access Rights Manager means to us, and hopefully to accomplish a goal that meets your guys' goals at your own organizations and IT infrastructures. So what does Access Rights Manager actually do, and what are we going to represent for you? This is going to be for your access rights to your systems, your data, your files, and that's like whether you're protecting your organizations from security breaches or if you're doing those frustrating audits, right, with complying and regulatory requirements. So that's what this is going to be over today, and we're just going to go over a little bit of the housekeeping that we have here. Everyone is on mute, obviously. Please use the questions. We encourage you. So if you have any questions about the product, about the presentation, and what we're doing, we are here to answer these, and we will do these at the end. We're also going to give you a copy of the slides and the links to the additional resources, and this is being recorded, so you're going to be able to get this. All right, let's dive in. So, as I said earlier, I'm Destiny Bertucci. You can call me Des. That's what everybody calls me online as well. I'm one of the head geeks at SolarWinds, and my focus point is actually in the security realm. I have a plethora of a background of security certifications and degrees, and security is a huge passion point of mine, as well as just mainly just the infrastructure that we have in IT. I have been across many of the realms and in many silos, so I understand where we're all coming from, and then I just kind of like to intertwine my security breaches. And Jim, I will let you introduce yourself.
Thanks. I don't have quite the cool jacket that you have on in your picture, but I get that nice corporate stuffy look. So my name is Jim Hansen. I'm the VP of Products for Security and Cloud. So that's all the various security products and the cloud products that we have here at SolarWinds. I've been around for a long time. I guess my picture doesn't really articulate that, but I've been in the industry for about 18, 19 years or so, building security products, delivering security products, and ultimately just helping organizations just make themselves a little bit more secure and a little bit better off in terms of what's going on out there in the world.
Definitely, and I am so glad that he's came on board because the security ramp up that we have had is just tremendous. So if you look at the slide that we have here, this is our IT security management tools of today. And I say today because we're constantly moving with you in this hybrid world and we're going to new realms, right? So constantly look into us because we're molding and we're changing, we're building on what we know, and we're building that excitement into the security realm to help you guys be that 500-pound gorilla, right? Like we want to be able to be your security people waiting for you and meeting all of your needs that you have. So what you see in our security portfolio currently is we have the the access rights manager that you're going to see here in just a moment. We have threat detection. We have a SIM tool. We have patch management because everybody loves Patch Tuesday. Am I right? And then we have managed files transfers as well as the FTP server. So these are the realms of which that we have in a little bit of our portfolio for IT security. And then when we look at what we wanted to focus on and to protect, this is kind of your NIST framework, right? Well, it is. It is the NIST framework. So we're going to identify, we're able to protect, we're able to detect, we're able to respond, we're able to recover within our realm of SolarWinds to be able to help to protect you. Now, a lot of the times we get lost in the woods with these, and what I like about using things like NIST and CIS frameworks and things of those nature is a lot of times we just don't know where to start. And if we go to these and we see the breakdown in the categories, you're able to move around and maybe the tools that you already have, or if you have tools in your system side or your network side, you're able to incorporate maybe asset management, some of the risk assessments, your detection processes, things like this. And what we wanted to do is when we focus on protecting with access control, awareness and training, data security, info, maintenance, protective technologies, what we're wanting to do is show you how Access Rights Manager helps you to be in this pillar. And is there anything that you wanted to add to that, Jim? Because protect is a big word, right? But we are protecting because knowing what you have in your Access Rights Manager, when you're looking at your OUs and you're looking at everything, that's a big problem that people have because they don't see it visually.
Yeah, it is, Des, and I think that's a great point. What I look at when I see these technologies, and the reason that we like the NIST framework and CIS and these kinds of things is that it really highlights the fact that some of these capabilities are foundational. Think about it as basic security hygiene. What are those foundational things that you need to do in order to make sure that your infrastructure is protected? It's kind of like brushing your teeth every day. You do it because you need to. It's a good hygiene. You take a shower. Same thing when you're looking at security. You need to put in place the right basic foundational security controls. And again, the product that we're going to be looking at today, Access Rights Manager, is all about permissions and managing permissions and users. And at the end of the day, when you're looking at how a lot of breaches, both from an insider perspective and an external perspective, happen, it's to a large degree because those things aren't managed terribly effectively, and therefore there's often holes that need to be filled, right?
Low-hanging fruit.
Yes.
That's what I always tell people. Don't be the low-hanging fruit because the average people that are trying to attack aren't really the ones that are just like, big corporations, things of that nature. What they're doing is they see the CVEs, they see the patching that's needing to be done, they see the vulnerabilities just as much as the good guys do. So if there's known events that are out there, there's known vulnerabilities, or if there's known ways to get around, or people are granting themselves permissions, or people are doing things and you're not being on top of it, you're low-hanging fruit, and there's literally protocols that's helping people to be able to grab you. And when we also think about on the protection basis, when we're going into like access control and on this awareness that we had, one of the things that I really love about Access Rights Manager is right out of the gate, it's going to help improve your security posture, and it's going to mitigate those insider threats. And when I say that, it's because when you're able to visualize what is going on, who has access, is there looping, do they have sub-access, is somebody granting themselves access, is there things that are going on across here, when you're able to see this, report against it, and be able to write in there each time, you're already improving your security posture because, as I always say, if you don't manage and monitor things and you're not seeing the full picture, then you have no idea what's lurking out there within your IT infrastructure. So it's really important to have that visualization and being able to integrate with those systems and be able to know what is happening there. And demonstrating compliance that's such a big word because a lot of the times compliance just seems mundane, right? Like it's just like, oh, God, not again. I have another audit. I have something that's going across there. But when you have a tool that allows you to keep up to date, that allows you to maintain ongoing as well as backwards, like to be able to say, this is what this is how we're going to name this is the file system, this is the data. When you're able to have this stuff ongoing, it's easier to maintain and update, which means that you're most likely going to be able to do that. We can't make you update and do things, but when you have an out-of-the-box tool that's going to allow you to automatically have compliance reporting, it makes it a lot easier to become compliant. And when it's easily managed your user permissions, when we have a self-sufficient user permission, like, be able to ask for permissions and be able to delegate those out, have templates ready, have things available for you, that just takes away that tedious work of which that you're doing, and also it takes away the issue of human error. And human error usually gets us on the security side. I know on like networking, you can fat finger something or make a mistake and literally take down a network, or make some changes that are around their firewalls and let the wrong people in. Same thing happens with your access rights and when you're looking at permissions and the way that they go through there. If you have a known template for a marketing department, for a sales department, for things like that has already been tried and true, when you're giving user provision, when you're provisioning users, you're able to actually have a template base so that you don't have to worry about making those little mistakes and giving somebody more rights than what they need to. Mm-hmm. And that enhances your productivity out of the gate, as well as it's unexpectedly simplistic. Is there anything you want to add to that, Jim?
Yeah, I would just point out that when you talk to IT administrators that are responsible for Active Directory and SharePoint and Exchange, OneDrive and so forth, what you find is that they all really struggle with some of the same foundational problems. Simple things like, hey, can I just get a simple report that shows me what people have access to across my various file servers and SharePoints and so forth. Changing permissions for a user or group is pretty time consuming. You have to go in and you have to go figure out what they have access to and then make changes. And the reality is most of the IT administrators don't actually know what somebody should or should not have access to. So they have to rely on data owners, the folks who are actually responsible for the data, to help them understand what it is that they need to actually be making changes to. So that just increases the time it takes to go make changes. And of course, then lastly, just being able to audit all of that capability that people are have access to, whether it be a file or a folder or what have you, becomes really challenging as well, right? Because you have to be able to know, well, who made that change? Why did we make that change? And of course, as we do that, it's really difficult to keep track of it. And as you pointed out from a compliance standpoint, being able to provide those really simple views of, hey, who made these changes? Why did we make those changes? And what changes were made?
And when you're doing a root cause analysis, or when you're trying to determine the breach or something that's happened that can be permissions available to data, right? Like, because data is literally what's controlling a lot of the things that we do. When we're thinking of that, it's nice to be able to report immediately on if there was changes made, who had rights, who's touched it, what is happening that's going across there, because that helps you to determine where the breach was, what the time, and it reduces that mean time to innocence, right? That's kind of a very important key part to when you're managing and monitoring anything within your IT infrastructure, to have the reporting capabilities available to you.
Yep.
And when we're looking at like what ARM can actually do for you today, when we discuss this, like your provisioning and deprovisioning of users, what I have seen in my lifetime especially is that a lot of the times we kind of put things on the back burner that are tedious, that aren't relevant for today. So if you're provisioning a new user, they probably need to have access, but deprovisioning users, sometimes they get left behind. And so those are one of the things that it's nice to be able to deprovision a user and know that it's gone and it's very easily inaccessible. But we don't want those users that are out there that are lurking. And those I've seen a lot of people that have used this tool, and they've loved this because they're able to go through and immediately be able to verify, hey, these people are gone. Okay, cool. Now when we make our change request, it's very easy for me to deprovision and get on with my life. And when we do the audit user accesses, we can see any of the administrative changes. We're able to see if things have been changing ongoing. We're able to see the information that's coming across there. We're able to see who the data owner delegation is in the compliance reporting. But most importantly, what I wanted to focus on is that let's talk about some of these Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, file servers. Jim, I know you were excited about the SharePoint and things that came across there, but what would you say some of our users were really excited about when they were like, hey, we're able to actually see the access rights and everything on SharePoint as well?
Absolutely, yeah. I think between SharePoint and
Cloud.
OneDrive and Exchange, just getting that basic visibility is super valuable because it gives them something that they've not really had before and allows them to control and manage it too.
Definitely. And a lot of times what I have heard from people when they were using some of these tools on-prem solutions, they weren't able to make the key markups within the, when they're making changes to help them, right? Like they're not able to help them to actually get across there and be like, hey, cool, we got this information now. And the tool itself wasn't showing me everything. So when they're able to use the Access Rights Manager, they're able to actually see everything efficiently like they weren't able to do before. And that brings us up to like paperwork, right? Because audits can be tedious, but ARM's going to make that easy. And I think that we pretty much covered the compliance part of that. But we wanted to hone that in, right? Because the paperwork is done for you ongoing. And Jim, I know you're going to show them where we're able to make those key marks. If you have change requests, things like that that's coming across. And then, you know what? Some things happen. The world is very imperfect, right? And by using those audit reports, by being able to provision, by being able to take out some of the monotonousness of access rights management, we're able to perfect the imperfect palace, right? Like, so that's kind of the thing which that we're wanting to do. Access Rights Manager's GUI, the way that you're able to use it, the way that you're able to interact and manage while being able to report is going to help you to find any of the issues that happened previously, as well as it's going to help you to stay on top of your compliance and your needs of your organization of which that you're in. And then the internal security threats. Be proactive about your user access. We don't want to be that low-hanging fruit, right? And so that's kind of what we're trying to do here. Know what you have, be able to see it, be able to delegate, be able to use ARM to help you every day within your organization. It's not a tool that you just use once and walk away from. It's interactive. It's your buddy. It's literally this huge robot that's helping you take over your infrastructure and say, hey, we got this. We have your back. So without further ado, Jim, I'm pretty sure everybody's wanting to see this right now.
I would imagine so. They don't want to hear us talk anymore. They just want to see this thing, huh?
Exactly.
All right, let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and hit this little share button here, and let's hope that it works. All right. Hopefully everyone can see my screen here. All right, I got a thumbs up here internally, so I'm good to go. All right. So what you're looking at here is I actually have this running just in a little virtual environment. It's basically a full Active Directory, SharePoint, OneDrive. I've got everything installed in here. Everything is emulating what a normal environment looks like. And what you do when you get into Access Rights Manager, I'll just show you a couple quick things because we only have about 6 minutes or so, is I'm going to go ahead and type in, let's imagine that somebody from the marketing team came to us and they said, hey, I want to see what permissions there are on this folder. I'm going to type in marketing here at the very top. And as you start to scroll down, you'll see that there's a number of different resources that ARM is going to show you natively. It can give you access to public folders and Active Directory resources, distribution groups. What I'm going to do just for sake of the demo here is I'm just going to click on this guy. This is a file server where clearly we have a marketing directory. And when you click on this folder, what's going to happen is that it's going to open up that view into the resources section of the product. And immediately, what you're going to start to see here is on the left-hand side, you can see all of the different folders that are within this file structure. You can also see the various permissions and so forth that exist for this particular folder as well. I'm going to take this, I'm just going to reduce this for just a moment just to get it out of the way. Because what I want to do is then open this up. You can start to see by just clicking in here, by, for example, full control, I can see that there's some domain admins. I see there's a system account for some reason that has full control on this particular folder. That seems a little suspicious, but we'll just leave that for now. You can see modify, read, and what's that?
I said that was probably an install.
It could be.
Fix it.
It turns out it's a demo environment, right? So it's here for some reason. I just don't know what. So, we have all of these different directories, right? And the point is that now, just at a glance, you can see very specifically what the users actually have access to. Now, if I actually raise this little guy back up and I click on, for example, full control, what this is going to do is actually going to give me a flat list of all of the users which are within the various groups that are in that subcontainer that you see right here. So we can see, for example, that Adam admin manager and an administrator account, Anthony admin, Antoine, and so forth, all of these users have very specific levels of access. Now, if I were to go over here and I click on marketing, what you're also going to see here is that there's this how often granted field, right? And this how often granted field basically tells you that this particular user has this number of paths into this folder. In this case, we're actually in good shape because everybody only has one. This means either their username or the group they're a part of is actually giving them access to this particular folder. But it's also conceivable that you might see multiple how often granteds here, in which case you actually know then that there are multiple paths that a user could potentially have, right? And if I were to actually scroll up here, for example, and I just click on all permissions, you'll see, for example, that Emily, employee here, has 4 different paths. Well, then you might ask yourself, well, what are those paths? If you click on that, now you can actually see the very specific folders, or excuse me, not folders, but permissions that this person has. So even if you were to remove Emily from her direct access to the folder, by virtue of the fact that she's got access through these multiple groups, she'll continue to have access to this. And this is a great example of just an increased level of productivity that you can get by being able to just simply look at the actual information here and do something about it, because now I know exactly what Emily has and how she has access to it. Now, for those of you who are looking over here on the left, you'll also notice these little green arrows. And these little green arrows are interesting. What this is telling you is that when I look at this folder, which is marketing, what I actually have is I have folders underneath here which have a different set of permissions than the parent. And again, very important when you're managing the permissions within a file server or even on SharePoint, because when you have different permissions, it means then that the inheritance has been changed. Generally, you'll put the permissions on the parent, and then you'll bring those permissions down. But you can see here, for example, that in the case of Flyer or Press, we actually have different permissions. And if I click on Press, what this is going to do is it's going to expand those permissions, and it's going to give me a little bit more information. Now again, for sake of time, I'm not going to go into all the details that I normally would, but what I do want to highlight is that when you look at this, now you can start to see very explicitly what the user actually has and what those additive permissions are, and also what permissions were removed. In this case, for example, with the videos folder, there is 1 added permission and 5 that were removed from what that higher level inheritance actually shows. And again, just very basic visibility into some of this information. Now, other than this, there's also other views that we make available, and I'll show this to you real quickly, because one of the other ways that folks use Access Rights Manager is to manage the actual creation and management of the folders. And for those of you IT admins out there, you're probably familiar with an acronym which is called AGDLP. There's another one called AGUDLP, and it basically stands for accounts. You put accounts into global groups, you put global groups into local groups, and then you put permissions into those local groups. And the whole idea of that is to structure in a programmatic way exactly how you specify those permissions, and then what ARM can help you do is basically go create those. So you have a brand new file server or even an existing one. What we can do is we enable this little group wizard. We go down here, we click on access categories, and now I can define tags that I can use to go create those folders. I can define the naming convention by which I'm going to create those folders. And when you do that, you have full control over what that structure looks like. For global groups, for example, I'm going to use a prefix of G and L and U and so forth and so on. And what will happen is then when I go create and add somebody to a new folder, if that structure doesn't already exist, ARM will actually just do that for you. It'll create it and save you tons of time having to go create those manual groups all by yourself. And again, just for sake of time, because we're a little bit out of time, we're not going to be able to show that to you today, but it's something that if you want to take a look at the trial version that we have on our website, go take a look at it, download it, play with it. All of this functionality is completely available for you to take advantage of. So I'm going to stop here because we are running out of time. And Des, anything else that you may want to add at this point in time? If not, we'll ask some questions.
I think we can ask them questions. Well, we'll wait for them to ask the questions, but we have a polling question that we're wanting to ask. So we'll just get this switched over.
Awesome. Let's do that.
And I love how you were mentioning on the group global and how it saves you so much time. And that's really what this is all about, right? Like the main focus point is to showcase how we're able to give you your time back and give you those weekends back too. All right. So now we have a poll question of which that we were curious of is, would you be interested in any of the following resources? Please check all that apply. So this is one of the ones that we have up here for you guys to do and to submit. And we'll give you a little bit of time on this one. While we're waiting on this for about 1 minute, I believe, that we can already see this. Cool. So for the pricing for the new additional licensing of ARM, which we have resources we are going to be sending out with the deck, that's going to actually give you a direct link so that you can download, use. As Jim said, fully functional. You're able to use it, play with it, know what you're going to get, and to be able to have.
All right. So I think we have a couple minutes for questions.
Well, this is great because one question I was sure was going to come up, which you've addressed a couple times now, was whether there's a trial that people could get access to and whether they can see some more of the demo. Looks like those are both options, so that's fantastic. We'll jump into some a little bit more specific questions here. Actually, let me back up and do a little broader one. The question here is about how does a tool like this help prevent what they call an internal security breach? I'm thinking that means either, disgruntled employee, somebody who's leaving and trying to take their data with them, anything like that, that's caught with a tool like this, or that you can manage their accounts so that they can't do something like that?
Yeah, I'll take a first pass at that, and Des, you may have something additional to add. But at its foundation, what I showed you already was that you can manage and control the permissions. One of the specific ways, if you know, for example, that you have a user that is going to be leaving, being able to run a periodic report within the actual solution. And if you recall when I was showing you that little marketing resource view, if you right-click on that, you can actually directly on that folder run a who has access to this data report, and it'll actually give you the option to select a user or a group of users. So for example, if you know that there are users that are flagged in some way that have that might have a short tenure left, then what you can do is actually run that report against those users, and now you can show explicitly what they have access to. What I also didn't have time to show you, though, is that we also audit that activity. And again, if you remember from that last view that I had up just a moment ago, there's a little tiny icon right next to the folder where that green arrow was. And what that is it's an actual audit log. So you can actually see all of the activity, and that audit log will give you visibility into not only what people are accessing, but also what changes are being made to the folders themselves, right? So that gives you the visibility. Now, from a protection against breach kind of perspective, what that's designed for is ultimately when you think about what users could or should be doing, now you have visibility into what people are doing so that now you can actually go take action if needed. If somebody, for example, is suddenly downloading a whole bunch of stuff from SharePoint, right, you should be able to know that they're accessing those files and folders and pulling them down. And again, that's just part of the audit capability that's built in.
And I would have
You
to say,
mentioned
like, one of the...
Oh, go ahead, Des.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, like, one of the major things that I always have seen on breaches internally with a disgruntled employee is because they don't get deprovisioned quick enough. So it's one of those things of if you're deprovisioning them quickly as soon as you know that they're gone, and if you're leading to them being gone, you're able to make sure that they're not spinning up new users because you're able to audit that, and you're going to be able to see is there people gaining access, adding access, doing things of that nature with the audit reports very easily, is so that you can kind of breathe your environment and know, hey, this is an anomaly. We need to investigate.
That actually dovetails really nicely into what I was about to ask, which is sometimes stuff like that just gets missed. So is it possible to control with, say, some sort of policy, things like, hey, if this account hasn't been used in 90 days, go ahead and disable it, that sort of thing? So even if for process reason or somebody is just overwhelmed and they miss getting that process started, it still gets taken care of?
Yeah, that's a great question. In another part of the interface, again, which we didn't have a chance to show just due to timing, there's a little area called Analyze. It's actually the header says Analyze and Act, and what that's designed for is it'll give you a list of all accounts, for example, that have not been active for the last 30 days. Not that they are enabled, but that they haven't been used in some kind of way. So using this scenario, you can simply go in and then you can use a bulk edit capability that's there to actually deactivate all of those accounts, right? And that, as you point out, that's a common scenario. You've got accounts sometimes that linger for a long time, and if they're not being used, disable them, right? You don't need to have those things enabled. Now, for ones that are, of course, being used on a regular basis, you still should control users and what they have access to, because You think about there's just a notion of like interns, right? An intern comes in and they move from department to department, and along with that, they collect this amazing amount of permissions to all the stuff that you have internally, and you need to be able to control that, right? So keeping on top of that, ARM really gives you a tool which allows you to more effectively control that, audit that, and then of course make those changes when needed to the actual user's permissions across those various resources that you have.
Got it. Okay. I've got one more poll question that I'm going to throw up here, and so you should be seeing that now, and I've got one or two more questions that I'm going to ask while I leave this poll question up. How about deploying this tool? Is that come in an appliance form factor that I can drop in, or do I just go install that on one of my servers, or how do we use it?
Yeah. So ARM is not an appliance. It is software based. And so it can be installed on pretty much any current version of Windows, from Windows 2008, 2012, 2012 R2, 2016, 2019. But of course, it can also be installed if, for example, you want to run it in a cloud environment. You just install it onto a Windows server up in the cloud, and you can actually run it there as well. It can be anywhere.
Okay, cool. Well, I don't want to go too deep into this, but how about licensing just at a high level? How does that work?
Yeah, so licensing within ARM is based off of Active Directory accounts, or I should say enabled Active Directory accounts. So if you're an organization, for example, that has 1,000 active enabled accounts, then we would license based on that number. And the details of that you can actually take a look at up on our website. We actually provide some baseline pricing and things like that. So if you're interested, go take a look at it. It's pretty straightforward and simple.
And something I'd like to throw out there that we didn't really touch on was that it is GDPR compliant, which I think is huge because you're able to put comment fields along the way, add in your CR changes, add anything that's going across there that's actually documented.
That is very important. I think that's all the time we've got for questions today. So Des, Jim, thank you so much for joining us on the MegaCast today.
You are very welcome.
Thank
you.
All right, I'm going to just share the results of this poll. Looks like we kind of got a heavy skew towards healthcare and technology today, so that's cool. Thanks everybody for being on the event. It is time to give away some prizes. First of all, I'd like to announce the winner of the first $500 Amazon gift card. That one's going to go to Simon Battersby from Colorado. Simon, we will reach out to you about that. And then I've also got an Apple Watch to give away. That's going to go to Ryan Courtney from Kentucky. Congratulations, Ryan. Be watching for an email from us about that. For our next presentation, we're going to be hearing from Greg from KnowBe4, and he's got a really interesting presentation for us. And actually, David's going to set this up and ask some questions. So I'm going to turn it over now to Greg.
Joined by Mr. Greg Crass. He is the Chief Success Officer for KnowBe4. Greg, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Thanks for being on the event today, Greg. Take it away.
All right. Thank you, Dave. All right, everyone. So I'm going to do a quick rip through on KnowBe4's new school security awareness training. Start with a few slides, then I'm going to jump in and do a product demo. Of any questions while I'm going, feel free to ask away. I'll take some of the common questions at the end. I'm going to try to keep this thing quick. I'm certainly going to try to keep the slides quick because, I'm not really a big fan of slides. I like to actually show off the product. So really quickly, let's talk a little bit about who KnowBe4 is, who we are. We've got over 23,000 customers spread over many different verticals. We're based out of Tampa Bay. Big thing for us is we're all a bunch of ex-antivirus security software pros. That's what I used to do. That's what our CEO used to do. A lot of our dev team, a lot of our sales team. We did this and we realized that antivirus is its own thing. It's not, it's kind of evolved out there. And one thing that hasn't changed and what got left behind was the human aspect. And it became very obvious, I'd like to say in hindsight now, that you have to secure the human part of the network just as much as the technological part, and more so nowadays because that's what people are going after. So I'm going to spend some time doing a demonstration, actually show how this works. So we do have one more slide, and this is some statistics from our console. This is showing actually looking across all of our accounts, and we look at them and say, all right, where do you start? And that's what we have up here. This initial baseline fish prone percentage. And this is what we find across all of the accounts. Typically, if you've got nothing in place or just a light security awareness program in place, you're going to start off with north of a 27% phishing failure. That's not normal to see people with 40% out there. And then you push them through online training, and you'll see that start to drop over time. And what's really interesting is that you'll see that it drops, it continues to drop. And what we find across our customers is that it stays down at a much lower level of risk. You stay down under the 2% or under the 3% level as people are actually using the console and as people are being trained, because it's not a one and done type of training. This is something that's ongoing, and you're managing that problem. You're keeping awareness in the forefront of your user base. You don't want those users to be, forgetting about everything as it goes on. So now I'm going to actually jump in and show you how it works. So everything is based on a cloud solution. There's no software that has to be installed on premises. Everything's going to be inside of this web console that you see here. I'm logged in as the administrator, so this is what you'll see once you have everything set up. And you get greeted by a dashboard. I'm actually going to touch on the dashboard because it's a great way to see all of the different metrics and data that we get when we're doing this. So the first thing you see is a risk score. This is where we're taking information having to do with training, job titles, have the users been in breaches, how they do with simulated phishes. A lot of different things are put together. It actually goes into one of our AI technologies, and it does a calculation. It comes back with a risk score for every user, and then it rolls that up to the organization so you can see the organization's risk over time. You actually see here that it starts low, and then when you first phish everybody and you realize that a lot of people fail, it actually goes up. And then as the AI sees people start not failing, people complete their training, that risk will go down. So risk score is a really nice feature for everything all at one metric. But then if you want to get down into the details, you want to see how does phishing work, you can see how the phishing tests work. You can see how you compare to the various industry benchmarks. You go down a little further, we have the option of a small component called the Phish Alert button that you can push out to your users, and it gives them a plugin. It works with Outlook Mobile, works with Outlook desktop versions, Office 365, G Suite. Heck, it even works with Lotus. And it gives the end user a button that they can push when they think that they see a phishing email. And then a little bit further down, we actually have the details on the various training campaigns that are going on. So this is the dashboard view. There's a lot in the console, so we have a few things that we go through to make it easier to get going. First thing that I'm going to show off is a tool called ASAP, which is our automated security awareness program. And I'll bring that up here. And just give me a second here. All right. So the automated security awareness program starts off with about a 15 to 20 question questionnaire. It takes a couple minutes to fill out. And the result is a program. And you could see the program starts off with something that has nothing to do with the console. It's engaging stakeholders. So we're actually trying to give you a program that covers all the bases. So if you don't even have a program in place, you can start from this list and work your way through everything from telling people that you're going to do it down to running final reports that you might send off to your board. So ASAP gets you started, tells you what you're going to do. Once you get ASAP set up and you've downloaded a PDF that you're running off of, or you use the built-in calendar, the first thing you're going to be doing is getting users into the console so we know who we're phishing and who we're training. Users can come in through a couple different methods. You can upload them one at a time. You can do through a CSV, or we have an Active Directory integration that's available to where you can synchronize your Active Directory. That's really nice because when you add users or you have users that leave, it keeps the console in sync. It also works really good with some of our workflow concepts. Our workflow concepts are all based on groups. When you're dealing with users in the console, everything is done by groups of users. Those groups can be synchronized from Active Directory. They could be groups that you set up on your own. You can also do groups where you put together groups based off of queries. So here's an example of a group just to drill into it. You can see I have a risk score for the group, but down here, I also have criteria about the user. So this is a very simple one. It's looking for any user that has not completed the CEO fraud ever. So that's a good way to find, okay, these are users that have never done it. And they're inside of the management group. So this is what we call a smart group because it's based off of criteria. Either it's an attribute of the user or it's a training or a phishing attribute. So we easily target certain people for something. So what are we going to do with these people? Well, let's talk about phishing. When you go into phishing, you get an overview of the phishing campaigns. You can see what's going on here, and you can actually see, all right, these are the campaigns that have happened. And if I wanted to, I can drill into the initial campaign. I can see more data about that. And then I can see the actual users and what the users did on that. And across the top, I can see all the different failure modes for a user. So I can see if they clicked on something, that's easy enough. If they replied, this is something that we do in our console where you can actually send CEO fraud or business email compromise, and you're actually looking for people to engage the phisher. Attachment open, we have Office documents, HTML documents that we can look to see if the end user opens those. The Office documents have macros that could be enabled. If a user clicks on a link and they end up on one of our web pages, they could enter data. So you're looking for credential phishes. And then in some cases, if they're using an older browser, we can actually ask the browser if there's vulnerable plugins or even offer up a Java exploit. And if they run the Java exploit, then we'll report on that. And then we have this green one here for reported, which means that they use that phish alert button that I mentioned earlier that actually lets us know, oh, this guy thinks it's a phishing email. And from here, when you're looking at phishing, you can also drill down into the details for a user and see their whole history. So again, risk score at the very top. And these are the different attributes that make up that risk score that I mentioned earlier: training, risk booster, which is something that the admin could set, exposure, that means that they've been in breaches, job function, and their behavior. You see the risk over time. And then I can see all the history of that user as it goes through their personal phish prone percentage for what they've done, what training they've done. And then I have a full timeline at the bottom. So you get as much data as you could possibly want on a user when you look at the phishing. But let's talk a little bit about doing your own phishing campaigns. So baseline campaign, you said, okay, I'm going to do all users, but you got to actually send something. And that's where our email templates come in. So you can make as many templates as you like, or you can use our built-in system templates. And right now it looks like we got about 2,700 templates, and we're updating these literally every day. We go through, we take the most common ones we see, we add them to categories, we get it all set up, and you can actually get a feel for some of them here. And I can look at one of these if we want to say, okay, low account balance. All right, so a generic banking template. Or if you want to do something more specific, maybe a Twitter one. All right, this looks pretty good. But let's say you wanted to change one of these. You can take any one of the templates that we have in here. You can actually modify the template. So if I want to go in here, make this template a little bit more difficult, I could put something like maybe the first name of the user in there and actually say, all right, so that's a little bit more specific. And then I can set up a specific page that comes up when they actually click on it. So now that I've modified it, I can take a look at it and I say, okay, now it's got my name in there. And what happens if a person actually clicks on it? What's the page that they're actually going to get? So really cool that you can actually set that up and see what's going to happen inside the console. And there's a bunch of other pages that you can set for when a person actually clicks on one of the links. So if you wanted to make a landing page that looks like a login page, you can do that. So I'm going to go ahead and give a sample of one of those here. So let's see, let's say I wanted to give the user a scare and I wanted to actually make it look like they had ransomware or something like that. I could go ahead and take a look at one of these. And this would be the page that would come up when the user clicked on it. So sometimes that's a good thing to do. Other times it depends on what you want. Maybe you want to make it a login page where the person actually has to log in and put in a password. We've got ones that look like that. But what I actually want to show is I want to show one of these other types of landing pages that is called an SCI landing page. And the SCI landing pages, we don't need to be doing the ransomware thing. These ones actually will show you, let me see if I find a different one in here. These ones will actually go ahead and show you what it looks like if a person actually clicked on one of the emails. And when they click on one of the emails, I can actually go this way here. It's actually going to show them all of these red flags will highlight on the landing page, and they'll actually see what it is that they should have caught when they were going through the message. So this particular one here is a chase, and it's showing this is just an ambiguous salutation. You're not going to get that sort of a communication from the banking institution. Not to mention, you probably wouldn't actually get this coming into your office if it's a personal account. So you've got your emails that you actually are sending, and you've got your landing pages that you'll do. Once you know what you're sending, who you're sending it to, and what happens, you can create your own phishing campaign very quick, and you can do it as quickly as maybe here. In fact, let me actually just show you. So sample, select who you want to do. Perhaps you wanted to do one where we're just going to do your accounting department, and we can say how long we want to send it and all of the granular options here, but I just want to send them the reported fishes of the week. This is a nice category because it changes every week. And this is another feature of the platform is we do a full random, meaning everybody gets a random email, not the same email, because you're not really looking to see if people tell their friends, hey, don't click on the gym membership. It's a phishing email. You really want to see, are people on their toes? Are they keeping track of these items? So there's a lot of other little tweaks you can do, but this is the general gist of a phishing test. Once you've run your phishing tests, you're going to run your reports. And we have reports here. These are our built-in reports that are standard. And then we've got another section here up at the top. These are the advanced reports. These are also part of, let's actually click on that correctly here. The advanced reports, there's actually 64 different reports in here. So I'm not going to show all of them, but there's one in particular I like to show, which is the group report card, where you can grab any one of the different groups that you have in the organization and see at a high level the details of how that group has been doing, their risk score, their fish-prone percentage, what types of failures they have. Is the group growing? Is it shrinking? How many people are in the group? What they fell for as far as phishing, and what type of coverage you have in the way of doing your training. So advanced reporting has a lot of other things in here. So if you wanted to just do fish-prone percentage, that's easy to do, but perhaps you wanted to do it and actually do a correlation of fish-prone percentage in relation to the size of the group. So you've got a lot of different things that you can put together inside of one of these reports, so you can actually see, okay, way over here, the accounting department, they've done a lot of training, but they also have a very bad fish-prone percentage inside the group. So advanced reporting will give you that level of detail that you may want to see. And if you want more, we actually have reporting APIs that are available. So you pull it into your own business intelligence and run as many reports as you like. So that's the phishing side. Once you've got your baseline done and you set up your monthly campaigns, you're going to go ahead and train your users. And to train your users, you need content. This is where we have the mod store. And this is something I actually have to look at this every time I run one of these demos. We've got 783 pieces of content. It's definitely the largest collection of awareness training out there. And this awareness training covers everything from your basic social engineering type training to, we've got things for HR in here. We've got items for compliance, everything from 2-minute videos to 45-minute interactive training. Heck, I think the OWASP training is even longer than that. And we do that because not only do we make our own content, but we've been doing strategic acquisitions for a few years now, where we buy companies and we keep them in place, making content, making it in their own style. So if I look at the security awareness company, this is their type of training. They've got 387 from them. But if I look at someone like Popcorn Training, similar content, but very different style, all animated, and it's more fun. These guys are out of South Africa. It's a really fun style. And then you have Exploki, which is another one of our companies. They're a German company, so you have a very more serious approach, but it's shorter videos. So all of this content is in here. And on the right-hand side, you can break it and filter it up, and you can find whatever it is that you're looking for. So if you're looking for GDPR, here's 2 samples of GDPR. But if I wanted to look at GDPR across all companies, I can do this, and then I can drill into it, and I can preview all of the different available languages as much of the content has been translated. So once you get your content picked out, then you're going to set up a training campaign. Very similar to the way that you would set up a phishing campaign. Once you've set that up, you can go in here and see the status of the individual courses that you've set. You can see the completion levels, and there's ways to actually notify people that haven't completed. There's workflow to where you can automate that so that when people haven't finished it over a certain time, it reaches out and lets them know and says, hey, you need to get this finished. So training campaigns are also very easy to set up. It's also very easy to set up remedial training. So if someone fails a phishing test, or maybe they fail 3 phishing tests, then they automatically get pushed back through training. It's all things that you can set up in the console to do. In addition to the traditional phishing and training, we also have voice phishing. The voice phishing allows you to actually have or vishing, which is the ability to do phone call. The phone calls, similar to the email, it's all template driven. You can do templates that are text to speech, so it's the robot caller, or you can do pre-recorded templates. So it's actually voice actors that we had that created these templates. A lot of fun. And a lot of these are also available in multiple languages. So you get those phone calls, you're looking at that point, is the person letting data out by hitting keys on the phone? We also have a USB drive test where you can download certain files. And when you have these files, you put them on a thumb drive, you leave those in your public areas, you leave them on your desk. Heck, you could even take the files and put them up on a file share and see, are people just grabbing those and opening them? It'll track that information here, and then you get reports on that. And then the last part I'm going to show here, I mentioned earlier that we have, for our risk score and our advanced reporting, we have one of our AI engines. This is another one of our AI engines, ADA, which is artificial intelligence driven agent. This is where we are going. This is where things are moving towards, is to actually allow you to set up a phishing campaign where all you say is who. You say, all right, I want to phish accounting. And you can see this is actually a very similar to the last one for phishing campaigns with a lot less options. That's because it figures out what's best to do. It looks at the user profile. It decides, am I going to send emails? And then you do have 2 options of, is it allowed to do text messages and VoIP calls? And it'll try to link all those things together. So you get an email that says you have a dentist appointment. Then you might also get a reminder text message that says, yeah, your appointment's coming up. You have an email that confirms that. If you feel this is an error, go check out that email and click on it. So AI is where things are moving. So we've been using that quite a bit here in the console. So I know I'm running pretty quickly, so I'm sure there's some people that have some questions, but there's one other thing I need to talk about on the training, and that has to do with the subscription levels, because with that much training, it doesn't always come with all the different levels. However, and I actually have a slide for this, switch over to that. The training is broke up by the subscription level. So we have our basic level at silver, which gives you unlimited phishing, gives you the basic testing, phish alert button, a lot of the things I showed off, the Active Directory integration, all that comes at silver. It's good enough to get started. It gives you a good access to getting a security awareness program. And then when you jump up to gold, you get access to more training. You get the voice phishing. Platinum has the social engineering indicators and the smart groups and the reporting APIs. You get that. And then once you get to diamond, you actually have access to everything in the training library. So all of that content, so you can really get into it. And I didn't have time to show it off, but not only are there videos and quizzes, there's also things like posters and newsletters. So if you want to actually download the posters and print them off and put them in the break room, all of that is built into the Diamond subscription level. So you get that. And then at the bottom, there's one last option that is available. It is PhishER. It's actually not part of the platform I just showed here. But if you've deployed the phish alert button and you have your users reporting a lot of suspected phishing emails, that's the tool that you'll use to actually go through and prioritize those emails that are being reported, identify the trends, the threats, get things back in people's hands quickly. So that's PhishER. think I've left a little bit of time here so we can actually go through and take some of your questions. So, David, have you got any questions that people have been asking?
Absolutely, Greg. Yeah, really great presentation. Love the live demo. Love to see the product in action. So, first question that came in here is, how often do you recommend we phish our users?
That's a good one. So, I personally recommend that you do it at least once per month. And when you're doing that sort of phishing, it's actually sometimes we've got customers that do it weekly, but that's not realistic. But once a month is the minimum. We find some larger organizations have a hard time getting buy-in on that because it seems like, well, that's a lot of work for people to do. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's one email a month. If it's anything like my email, one email isn't even a drop in the bucket. But what I say in those organizations that want to phish quarterly or, God forbid, twice a year, what about the people that fail, or what about new people that you don't know how well they're doing? Can you phish them more frequently? And usually the answer to that is yes. And that's one of those things where the smart groups come in. It's easy to set up a process that people that haven't ever been phished, they get phished right away. And then if they fail, they get a more frequent phishing until they stop failing. And that way you actually get you get an uptick on how well people are actually absorbing that data. So quick answer, once a month. The long answer, as frequently as needed in order to actually make a difference.
Okay, that makes sense. And then when someone fails a phishing test, do they automatically get assigned some sort of training to help them learn more and prevent that next time?
Yes, you can set it up to where they can do interactive training, or you can do just point of failure training to where the page that they end up with is showing them what they did wrong, or maybe has a video embedded into it. There's a few different ways you can approach that.
Very nice. And then what about training for like SMS messages that people get on their smartphone?
Absolutely. That's something we have specific modules for, and the platform does allow you to set up the vishing tests, and then the AI part, the ADA platform actually also does the SMS messages.
Okay, very nice. And then let's see, another question here about, can you track if the user forwards the email to someone or replies?
Yes. So two different things there. If the person forwards the email to another person and then it gets clicked, the failure is going to be associated with the person that the email was originally sent to. And there's two things on that. One, well, we don't really know. We only know the uniqueness of the email. So that failure goes on that person, which honestly, there's a failure in that person didn't follow the correct process of dealing with the phishing email. If they're using the phish alert button to report the message, that counts as a positive. They get a green checkbox. There's little fanfare. So it's a good thing. But if they were just to say, "Hey, I'm going to forward this to Bob next to me," and have him look at it, that's going to count as a failure on there, so that they actually it counts it there. And if for whatever reason it's erroneous, there's a way to go ahead and say, okay, that wasn't a legit. You can actually remove the history of the click on there. So there's a couple different ways to address what happens with the message if a guy's forwarding it along and he isn't forwarding it to the right place.
Okay. And then probably the last question we have time for is, what's the cost to use KnowBe4's solution?
Oh, that's a good point. I didn't even talk about that when I was going through. It's based off of the subscription level, but the pricing is done per user per year. So you're looking at an annual subscription, and it's variable sliding scales. But I like to say the rule of thumb is that it's about $15 a user per year if you're going with like the more common platform, I think it's the platinum platform or the diamond platform, and you've got about 500 users. But those prices vary wildly. Your best bet is to actually reach out for a quote to find out exactly what you need and what that price would be.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being on the event today, Greg.
Oh, well, thanks for having me.
For more information on KnowBe4, visit knowbe4.com. Also, check out their handout that's available for download right there in your console.
All right. Thanks, David and Greg. Appreciate that from you guys. We're going to do one more poll question and then some more prize giveaways and move on to the next presentation. So just real quick, I'd like to know whether this is something that you'd like to know more about. If this is something you could use some more information on, just let us know and we'll make sure and get that to you. I'm going to leave this up for just a minute here while I do the prize drawing. Two drawings, actually. We're going to do another gift card and another Apple Watch. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move on. Next round of prize winners. For the gift card, it's going to go to Walid Mayel from Virginia. Congratulations. And the Apple Watch this round goes to Tom Rodriguez from Texas. So both of you be watching out for an email from us so that we can collect your information and get those prizes out to you. All right, next up, we're going to be hearing from William Bell, who's an Executive Vice President of Product at Phoenix Nap. William, are you there?
I am here. Thank you for letting me join today.
Awesome. I'm excited, and we're ready to go, so take it away.
Perfect. All right, everybody. I promise I'll try to get you through this quickly and painlessly, keep you entertained, and hopefully you guys can win a prize afterwards. So Phoenix Nap is an infrastructure as a service company that was built in 2009. A little over 500 employees, and we've expanded really rapidly. So we're over 10 data centers today, kind of a map showing where we're at. So basically pretty much anywhere in the globe. And what I want to talk to you today is about some of our security offerings. But first, I'm going to give you kind of a little overview of everything that we work on as a business. So if you're looking for any of these other things, please feel free to reach out. So, we've really worked hard to become an industry leader in infrastructure as a service, specifically in the secure infrastructure as a service arena. But really focusing hard on making sure that our customers, both in our data centers and in our security services offerings, have a holistic approach to what they're working on. So when we look at most of our customers, they don't have any type of security program. They really are struggling to find and retain talent in the industry. So definitely something that a lot of our customers working with. Everyone's getting a super preview. I'm not certain how this wasn't caught in QA, but effectively, when we look at our service business, we see that a lot of our customers are looking for a provider that can get them to a better security posture, that can help prevent breaches, and can provide them with a hosted solution that kind of ties all that together. And that's really kind of where I'm going to spend my time and focus. So, there's some statistics that are mentioned here from Ponemon and Gartner. Cybersecurity damages are growing drastically. They expect, as much as $6 trillion in damages by 2021, and over $1 trillion in expenditure in security technologies. So what are we doing about that? What are we doing to try to help? So we're taking all of these infrastructure solutions and we're wrapping them in a security services delivery framework, something the industry calls a manage, detect, and respond concept. So we're really working hard to ensure that our customers are being kind of taken through this process that we describe on the left side here. And I'll share these slides with everyone so they can see afterward, or somebody will, I think. But really take them through this process to highlight, building on the right architecture, wrapping those policies and procedures in, finding all the things that you've got, really monitoring that infrastructure, and providing effectively threat detection and incident response, all from one provider. And so when we look at these kind of the building blocks of these technologies, we want to look at the communications infrastructure, the server and storage infrastructure, the network components, the applications and the operating systems, and make sure that we have a really holistic view of the environment that we're working inside of and that our customers are operating. And so when we look at kind of, overall and what we, have observed and are observing through our threat intelligence platform, we're seeing a broad swath of the market, right? We're able to get in front of a lot of these threats that customers may face just because we have eyes everywhere across the globe and sensors everywhere looking at that. So I think it was noted here, we saw 53,000 threat indicators last year alone that we treated effectively as some type of potential incident of compromise, right? We're trying to find the real meat of that. So we have to get through the noise and create real actionable intelligence that we can pass to our customers. So we deliver that today for our PhoenixNAP customers in our global data centers. But really what I wanted to focus on was how we deliver that as kind of one large holistic service, right? And so our data security cloud platform is one of only, at its basic core, is one of only 15 VMware Cloud verified platforms in the country, and the only one that is focused top to bottom on data security. And that's everything from micro-segmentation to auditable infrastructure to 24/7 SOC and threat intelligence, and really making sure that from the application to the hard machine running the cloud service, we're looking at every bit of this holistically, right? So we have this concept of secure by design. We're taking everything that we do, and we're trying to ensure that the customer is basically benefiting through a reference architecture that we've built and delivered in a very secure, highly compliant, multi-tenant fashion, right? And so you get to leverage our security services technology, our cloud infrastructure experience, and our focus on cost effectiveness to really drive the solution that you're looking for home and make sure it provides value for your business. So that was as quick as I can go through it because of the slide advancing. I do apologize again. We'll make sure we get that cleaned up. But if there was any questions, I'd love to take them and get you guys on to the next presentation, next prizes.
That was very quick. And yeah, we do have plenty of questions here. We will absolutely make sure that everybody gets a copy of those slides so that you can review them in more detail without them flipping around on you. So a couple questions here. How does the environment that you're describing compare to the standard private cloud or private virtualization environment?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of components that are really important here. First, I think from a compliance perspective, our focus is trying to drive through as many cross-functional compliance frameworks as we can handle effectively. As the market is demanding of us right now, but I think at some point we'll have to kind of cry uncle. So we're focused every single day. We started with PCI HIPAA. We're working on ISO 27001. We're looking at FedRAMP. We're looking at some other things. And so that itself isn't so much the differentiator with PCI and HIPAA, but as the platform kind of matures and we get further down the road, I think it will really distinguish itself from a compliance perspective. The next side of this is this holistic security view. So when you occupy the platform and you're consuming our data security cloud service, there are a couple of components that are kind of truly not optional, right? So you've got backups as an example, right? We take a backup of your environment regardless of whether you want or not, right? So we're working with you to try to take care of that. It also provides that last level of security protection if something was to get compromised, that kind of baseline defense. We're monitoring the syslog from the network firewalls in our basic package, and we're feeding that into our 24/7 SOC. We're applying our incident response, policy to that. Sometimes it's active, sometimes it's not active, where we're working with the customer to do remediation on their own. So, really this just kind of focus on every bit of security. And we've got some things that we're working on with Intel and VMware and some other partners to try to really create what could be one of the most secure infrastructure as service platforms on the planet, right? We're looking at ways to do third-party key management for multi-tenant VM encryption. So that's kind of unique, where you could actually leverage your enterprise key management systems to encrypt virtual machines that are running in a multi-tenant platform, something you can't even do with Amazon today. So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely some ways that we're focused. And then we're driving that value home, right? Making sure that that all of this doesn't come at a super boutique Cadillac price. We're trying to commoditize, automate, and deliver these services as best we can without degrading the security stance.
Now, as you were answering that question, you mentioned some certifications and compliance standards that you're prepared for. I think especially for certain verticals, those are really important. Could you list those off again and talk about the ones that you think are most critical?
Absolutely. So when we've kind of set our target list, so PCI and HIPAA were, without a doubt the most important, right? When we look at the number of businesses that are subjected to those two compliance standards, we set our sights there first. We also have a very long history with both of those compliance frameworks and our standards frameworks. So it was easiest for us to accomplish. But what we've taken on now really is that next level of compliance. So there's a few out there that are really important to us, and we kind of have a roadmap for this year. So I mentioned ISO 27001. What else? The CJIS framework, the criminal justice framework that's out there, which is kind of somewhat ISO related. We're looking at FedRAMP and some other kind of regional certifications, whether it's per state based on states that we have the service, and things like that. So yeah, I mean, that's really, obviously we have, sorry, I neglected to mention, but SOC 1, 2, and 3 on that platform as well. So it's a lot of work, and really I think one of the things that is the most promising steps around compliance that we're taking are trying to find ways to make it easier for the customer to become compliant, right? And so we're working with a couple of vendors on our roadmap for 2019 to try to find ways not just to provide a compatible environment for compliance, but to actually deliver some tools and services around governance and risk as a service that the customer can rely on to actually help them get compliant on their end.
Very good. I've got a couple of poll questions here that I'm going to pop up as we take just a couple more questions. I got at least one or two more here. So first one will look familiar if you've been on for the whole event. If you'd like to learn more, just let us know. We'll make sure and get you hooked up with that. Something that I saw on one of your slides, but I don't think has been discussed very much today, and I'm seeing some questions about, is around microsegmentation. Can you talk a little bit about what that is, why it's important in an environment like this?
Yeah, totally. So when you're working with a multi-tenant environment, there's positives and negatives, right? I think a lot of people are scared of multi-tenancy, although that's kind of come down over the years with the prevalence of Amazon and Azure and the other hyperscalers. So, being able to leverage microsegmentation not only to help secure the infrastructure, where we can actually, when you create microsegmentation, you're leveraging software-defined networking technologies to apply intelligent rule sets to network communication between applications and the internet, between two applications, whatever, at the virtual machine level, or call it instance level in some kind of corner cases. But effectively, in a traditional network, when you look at microsegmentation, or when you look at network segmentation, you would create what most people are familiar with, a VLAN, right? Create a VLAN, create another VLAN, right? Route between them and put firewall rules or ACLs, network access control lists, between those two VLANs. With microsegmentation, you can start to create kind of abstracted security policies that are applied at the virtual machine or physical machine network port. So you could say, I've got one big network, one physical network VLAN, right? All my VMs are sitting on this one physical network. And then I can actually say these two machines on the same network, dot 1 and dot 2 can't talk to each other, right? I can only communicate on this protocol. And that level of microsegmentation, and it goes way further than that, I can't get into it here on the call, but allows you to create very application-specific, very tightly controlled, policy-based network control that follows virtual machines around regardless of what physical network segment they're placed on.
Perfect. Okay, one more poll question for one more Q&A question. Okay, so this may be getting into the weeds a little bit here, but I think this is about the compliance certifications that you were just talking about, but Nathan's asking if they were to use the resources in your cloud that is certified, does the customer also need to become certified to meet those compliance requirements? I'm thinking the answer is probably yes, but I guess it depends where the data lives, right?
Absolutely. So I think that the key here is we're facilitating faster compliance through checking a bunch of boxes that you would have to check yourself if you were to run the infrastructure on your own, right? It's a very heavily summarized version of the reality, but that's actually what I was talking about at the end. We're looking at, because we have the data, as you said, because we have the virtual machines, because we know the assets and we know the network policies and we know all these things because we're providing those as a service, we're looking at ways to extend the evidence gathering process and provide tools that can produce reports for you, the customer, that say, I've reviewed my network control lists. I'm managing my firewalls and looking at denials, and basically checking all those boxes for our customer and handing them a piece of software or a PDF that they can give to their auditor that says, look, they're doing this for me. Here's the evidence. Here's their compliance that they have that's listed in the validated service provider list. And you get what's called a trust mesh at that point, right? Where the auditor trusts us because we've already validated with another auditor that we're doing X, Y, and Z. And that's kind of the key to the kingdom of the future. That's where we're headed with this, is to make it so that you can just truly maybe take a few weeks with some non-dedicated security personnel and write some policies and maybe change your HR systems around or whatever to become compliant, versus what you have to do today, which is everything from scratch. I think they just released a new framework coming next year, but 284 controls, I think, in PCI, which can be very daunting for a business that's never undertaken some type of compliance efforts like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it'd be super helpful to have a partner who can help with that. All right, that's all the Q&A questions we've got time for, but I think there's some more waiting for you here in the console. So appreciate your time here today, William.
Thank you, guys, and apologies again for the slides. Have a great one.
Okay, it's that time again. Going to give away another gift card and another Apple Watch. This time around, the $500 Amazon gift card goes to Josh Mitchell from Colorado. Congrats, Josh. And the Apple Watch prize winner is Scott Bowes from Maryland. Congratulations to both of you. Watch out for an email from us on those. Next up, our final presenter today, Tim Fong from Cloudflare. Tim, are you there?
Yes, I am. Good morning, everyone.
Take it away, Tim.
All right, great. Thanks, everyone, for joining. So let's see here. I'm going to make sure I can move my slide here. That doesn't seem to advance the slide. There we go. So today we're going to talk about cloud security, particular adoption, and some of the challenges, some thoughts that we've observed as we work with a bunch of thousands of customers, all sizes, in terms of securing their cloud infrastructure or their applications that are running in the cloud. So I wanted to start off, I've got a couple of quotes here. They're all from McKinsey, and it's not we're biased towards them in any way. It's just the full reports, if you want, are free as opposed to others. So the point of this one is, I call it the transformative imperative. In other words, people are in a situation, businesses are in a situation where they have to do something, and the cloud is often a way to do it. And the changes aren't typically incremental, they're often disruptive, because if they don't do it, another business will. And here at, still not, okay, double click, there you go. And so here at Cloudflare, I kind of boiled down what are the things that are driving this change. And these might be sort of external, these are all external to your business, but I think it's important to sort of get on the same page around what this could be. So the three things are: customers are more global, so they're from either further away from your data center, or they're just very widely dispersed, and that can include your workforce or contractors. They're more demanding, which is a broad term, which I usually say they want something faster, cheaper, better. They want things on the internet that work as good as if they were right on a desktop, and that extends into mobile, meaning they're moving around. They are not in one fixed location. They're in a coffee shop in one place, on a train in the other, and they're working from a variety of devices. If you put all those two together, that causes change in the business. So many companies are adopting to that by moving to the cloud. And one of the things that I've observed, and it's sort of addressed here, is that there are some challenges with moving to the cloud that people encounter. And there's a lot of different pieces, and we're not going to talk about all of them. We're going to talk about how that shift has to do with security. I would love, we don't have a poll here, but if you could put into the chat, what do you think are the compelling forces that are driving your business? Do you think it's all of them, global, demanding, it's mobile, it's something else? And then put them in the chat, because I want us to keep going through, because we have a lot of content to do in a short amount of time. Based on some of those answers that we've seen with customers when we deliver this, a lot of the challenges are that they are in an on-premise environment, but they're trying to move to a cloud, but they're often sort of, they're stuck. There's something that's in the way, and often it's security. And I'm going to talk about what those things are. But it also has to do with the complexity of what they're trying to do. So here's a big bucket of how many companies are sort of addressing their challenges. They are moving on the bottom in terms of their infrastructure, somewhere along that spectrum. So it can be anywhere from on-premise all the way up to multi-cloud. And often for many of the companies that are bigger, they have different departments or divisions in their business that are in different stages. And they're moving along that spectrum, and maybe they're making a jump. I spoke to some that went straight from on-prem completely to cloud native. They didn't go hybrid. Some go forward, and then they try to have part of the business goes backwards. At the same time, the architecture or the applications and how they're deploying applications is changing. And the biggest spectrum is they're going from a monolithic environment to a microservices environment. So, I think this is a good spot for you guys to share in the chat. What are you experiencing? Because then we can kind of address them in real time here. Whether it's infrastructure, whether it's architecture, and these are some of the things that will affect where you are in terms of securing. But I found that those are two very big buckets for any company that's in the cloud, planning to move to the cloud, expanding into the cloud. Now, concurrently with that, and why we're here, is that at the same time there's all this dynamic. So you have these dynamics with your customer, and you have these dynamics in terms of how you're responding to the customers. The attackers at the same time are getting stronger. And so I put into three big buckets in terms of how they tend to get stronger. And the common attacks that I've seen, particularly when you have things that are in the cloud. Now, this isn't comprehensive, but I think there's a lot of, these capture most of them. The first one is the range of DDoS, whether it's attacking your network or your application. And there's data compromise, and that can come externally through exploiting vulnerabilities or insider threats. And then a range of things that are malicious bots. These are different from botnets for DDoS. These are actually bots that are intelligent, execute certain business logic that can do damage to your business. So be curious, same thing in the chat for you guys to put in, what are the ones that you're concerned with? Now, I actually put 3 others on here as another broad part of a new framework that I've been developing with our input from our CISO, and they're called access risks, transit risks, and application risks. They kind of cover the same things. They're a little bit different. I think they're a helpful framework, and we'll talk about that if we have time in terms of how you use that framework for your own security evaluation. And so here is the nut of what I find when I talk to people that are going through all these changes and are dealing with attackers, is if you read this, it says that the paradigm that people use, that they bring, doesn't work in the cloud environment if they bring that same approach from on-premise. So a lot of companies, and when I talk to them, they're still taking exactly the way they've been thinking about their applications and their infrastructure from an on-premise environment and bringing that into their cloud environment. And I'm going to share with you what that actually does, what that dynamic that happens when someone goes about doing that. So this slide here shows how a lot of companies are operating. They have a bunch, if you look at the center part with the purple, that is the place where people are trying to bring their on-premise solutions and their framework of working on-premise and try to address the change in the cloud. So if you look at that, they typically have, and maybe you guys relate to this, I'd love to hear in the comments, is they have appliances because they have something that's on-premise and they have them in different data centers. So each of them have their own appliance. They may even be different types of appliances if one was an acquisition. And then some part goes to the cloud. So they say, well, we're going to have a cloud WAF for the cloud part. And then they have a load balancer that's in the cloud, but they also have a load balancer that's for their on-premise. And now they've got all this stuff that they've got that's trying to defend against that layer. Attackers are getting stronger at the same time. But then what happens as they move below the stack between on-premise or private cloud to multi-cloud, they find that they've coupled their security solution to their infrastructure or even the way they built their applications. So I've talked to customers who are like, yeah, we're slowed down our migration to the cloud because we have to handle all this legacy decisions that we made in terms of security. So letting their security decisions slow down their ability to adapt. And if you remember from that very first slide, being able to adapt very quickly is literally a life and death situation. So companies are at odds. They're making decisions based on that middle layer. And I've spoken to a number of companies which are like, we realize that this is a challenge. We shouldn't be letting the business be hampered by the security, but security is super important to us. And so, what are the options that they can do? And so at a high level, we usually have a discussion, and they always resonate around this, is extract those capabilities and consolidate. So if you see at the bottom, they're still going to make those changes around application infrastructure and their architecture. But instead of having and sort of managing multiple pieces and then either restructuring or migrating based on what the security is as they move through that bottom layer, they actually just say, look, we're just going to extract all of that, consolidate it, so we have a secure posture no matter where we are below. So in other words, no matter how they are progressing in terms of their infrastructure or their architecture, they have the exact same model in which they've extracted out the security components, they've consolidated it, and as companies move back and forth, they're able to maintain a secure posture. And so here are some of the things that people have said that's the benefit, that's the goal that they want. The first one was they wanted global consistency. In other words, I've spoken to some companies where they would say, you know what, we have a policy that works that's different from a different application, in part because they had different cloud providers as their infrastructure, and those cloud providers for their infrastructure all have different policies. So they couldn't have global consistency around those policies. At the same time, they also may have multiple data centers and literally have completely different on-premise solutions in different data centers, and so they weren't globally consistent. So a way to get that is to be able to have a solution that's extracted, but it's consistent globally. So for example, Cloudflare has it through 165 data centers. So you get global coverage, but it's the exact same bits, policies, and controls. The second part was some companies would say we would make a change and it wouldn't propagate fast enough. And maybe would make it in hours or days, but in security they need it to be done very quickly, in minutes, if not seconds. And so that was something where Cloudflare, because it has the data centers and everything is integrated, it was able to move quickly. The second one, which was very common, was agile control. They wanted to be able to move very quickly, as we talked about. They don't want to be hampered in terms of how do I deploy, how do I move infrastructure. They wanted to be able to make that very quick from a management and security perspective. And so that can be done with something that needs to be easy to use so anybody can use it, their teams, they can bring onboard people, even that aren't security experts can manage it. They needed a way to automate it. I spoke to a company in Europe where they really wanted to be able to make everything automated through APIs. And they wanted to be smarter than their own human staff could do. They wanted a way to understand the broader trends and anticipate those. And then the last part is, interestingly, they like the cloud because it is pay for the drink. You only pay for the usage, and they pay for the number of servers and the minutes or what have you. But when it came to talking about security, they wanted predictability. They found in some cases, while they liked the flexibility and the elasticity of infrastructure, they didn't like it from a security perspective, because if they were attacked, it meant they would pay for attacks, and that's not something they want to pay for. They want something that's consistent and secure. So that's sort of the ways that we extract complexity and do so for companies that allow them to be very, very agile in terms of their infrastructure and their application. I want to phase over a little bit here to talk about one framework which we've used with customers to help them know where should they focus if they want to make this kind of change. Because even though we're extracting the complexity and consolidating, it still can be pretty daunting. And so the way we propose to do that, when we've done with countless customers, and you guys will be able to do this yourselves with a download that's part of this presentation, is a security maturity model. And what that does is, for each of the key areas, which would be on the left, we would help you to figure out your levels. So level 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the idea behind that is to figure out where you are, to assess, where are you along those disciplines. So an example of a discipline could be application risk or transit risk or exposure to malicious bots. Some of the attack vectors that I shared with you guys earlier. And then sort of define what they are, and then we go through in very specific detail sort of what the posture is, how you're handling it, the way you're detecting it. And then you can say, well, I don't care about bots, so even though I'm level 1, I don't care about moving to level 4. But I am level 1 for DDoS, and we realize that's very important to us. So what does level 4 entail, and what are the steps, what are the characteristics in between? And these aren't product pitches, these are just capabilities. And many of them are covered by Cloudflare, but some of them aren't. This really is meant for you to have a conversation internally. Are we doing this? Where are we now? Where do we want to go? And how do we want to get there? So with that, that gives us a little bit of time for questions. So let's see here. Why do customers find it difficult or insecure to have multiple solutions based on infrastructure? Seems like a purpose-built point solution that gives a layered defense is more secure. All right, so that goes back to that picture with the big, in the layer cake with tons of stuff that's in there. So I think it is appropriate if the solution can only work in one environment or the other, or it's specific to one environment versus the other. So there probably are some scenarios. I've seen some solutions that really focus on, for example, east-west traffic, and that probably is the best solution if you're on-premise and a lot of your traffic is east-west versus using a cloud, which would, in most configurations, probably add latency. However, there are 3 big areas where if there is similarity or overlap, it is actually beneficial. The first part is workflow risk / agility. So while the business needs to be fast, the security teams also need to be fast. If the security team is slow in terms of remediating an indicator of compromise, which can happen if you have multiple solutions, and they have to go from one place to another place, they look at data from one appliance or one cloud solution and then look at someplace else, that's going to introduce a lot of workflow risk, and that slows you down in terms of being responsive. The second one that's similar, as I mentioned, is the consistency. You may have point solutions, which is great, but the risk is you set up a policy in one area for one application for one data center, and you really didn't have a way to ensure that's exactly the same or as you intended from a global perspective in another application, another data center. Now you've got potential risk. And then the third piece is skill set. So if you don't have the right skill sets, or it's hard to get those skill sets because there's a lot of different teams, then you have difficulty either hiring or training, recruiting. That kind of becomes sort of a problem. That actually is also a risk. So that's that. So what solutions do you provide to protect data within a public cloud? So that's a great question. So Cloudflare, I'm assuming you mean by us, by Cloudflare. So Cloudflare doesn't provide protection for data at rest. So it doesn't provide encryption, doesn't do anything with the database. But what it does is a couple of ways. Is it prevents very common attack vectors which do extract data. So interestingly, one of the oldest, but still more common if you look at the OAuth 2018 report, is that SQL injection is still a very common way for data to be extracted. So we have a WAF, which is designed for 0 days, especially around SQL injection for web applications. But another sort of data loss that we've found is account takeovers. So someone's able to come in, they use a credential, the stuffing attack, they're able to get in, extract like user private information, or if they attack an admin portal, they're able to extract information. And so being able to detect that, so for example, with a rate limiter or with a bot solution, which we have, those are good ways for you to prevent that kind of threat. And then the third way is the data from an insider threat or similarly a credential stuffing attack. And so here, our access product is an example where by really scoping access to services or applications based on your role or your group, that really limits it. It's sort of like extending the power of the VPN, but with more granularity. So those are good ways to protect the actual data. And then the last part, I don't want to forget about, so you don't do it at rest. We cover it on the application part, but we also protect it in transit. So same thing, even though it may seem hard, there's still lots of places where people are still having applications where the data is clear text over the internet, and someone can simply just access that. So with our SSL being able to protect you all along, not just HTTP, but other protocols, has been a good way to secure that. So saying
I'm going to throw up a poll question here. I think we got at least one or two more questions, but I'm going to throw up a poll question while you answer those.
Okay.
There we go. You seen another one in there you want to take, or would you like me to throw a couple out there?
Oh, no, I've got some here. I'll handle it. Let me see here. Hold on a second. This one I might need some more clarification. So you're saying once security is set, it would not matter what online application or database is being used. This would speed things along. Is this what you provide? It sort of depends on, I'm trying to say, so once a security set, meaning, so think of it this way. Once a security policy is set that we do on the perimeter, then the application or the database, that doesn't change. Now, does it secure the database? No, it doesn't. But what it means is you build an application, you've designed it, you may have one application which is I'm tracking tickets, I'm tracking customers, and I have another application which I'm being built out, and I'm saying, okay, this is a shopping cart people can buy and purchase, but it's on a different database. If you have that on the perimeter, then you don't have to redo sort of another security solution. Cloudflare would sit in the perimeter, you would make sure we proxy all the traffic, you would be able to view incidents against the different types of applications. You could then, as needed, scope or provide specific information around it, but all from one control plane. So you wouldn't need to do something else. So I'm not sure if that answered the question, but if the question was, once you set it up, you can add and change applications in the background without needing to install a new protective layer, then the answer would be yes. Let me see here. What are customers supposed to be doing if they haven't fully migrated to cloud? Basically, when should they consider a horizontal cloud-based solution? So it's sort of related to the question that just was asked. I would say you start securing as much on the perimeter beforehand as possible. So sort of like the earlier question, once you start to secure the perimeter, this allows your migration decisions in terms of applications that are existing and moving to different infrastructure, applications that are existing that may be monolithic, that are moving to an API, microservices orientation, or brand new applications that are coming online. All of those could have that migration once you've secured the perimeter, because it really is decoupling the security policy from the infrastructure in large degree from your application. So one scenario would be you have a bunch of things that are on-premise, you secure the perimeter, and then you migrate bits and pieces as you see either specific applications or services, or rollback is necessary, but your perimeter is still the same because the traffic still has to go through one single sort of control plane. Is there another question? No? All right. I guess we are hitting limits. If you guys have any questions, you have our contact information, you have my contact information. I think as part of this, you get the full download of the security model. Whatever phase you're in, whether you are in the middle of evaluating new solutions or you think you're all good, I found it's still a valuable way to have an internal conversation. As always, someone from our team is glad to walk you through, how you use it, getting the right folks in the room. So I guess someone else is going to talk about the Q&A, or this is me?
Awesome.
This is me?
No, we're good. Thanks so much, Tim, for being on the MegaCast today. Appreciate it. It is time to do a couple more drawings, and then we'll just do a little bit of wrap-up stuff here. So last Amazon gift card and Apple Watch today. Two watches that we've still got left to give away. I'm going to do both right now. The last gift card, $500 Amazon gift card, is going to go to Mark Nagy from New Jersey. Congrats, Mark. And then I'm going to pull two names for the watches here. The first Apple Watch is going to go to Carlos Muniz from New Hampshire, and the second one to David Rizowski from Michigan. So congratulations, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Just want to leave you with a couple of parting thoughts here. One is I host a podcast called 10 on Tech. We publish a couple of episodes a month. They're quite short, and we interview people just like those that you've heard on the event today. And would love if you come and check that out too. And it's a nice way in between events to stay up to date on new things you might want to hear about. Also, if you're looking at other events to join us for, you can always just pop over to events.actualtechmedia.com and you can see both events that are upcoming that you can get registered for, and also events that have already taken place that you can register for and watch on demand right away. One in particular that I want to bring to your attention is the Data Management EcoCast that's coming up on the 27th. That's going to be an exciting event, and you should make sure and go to register for that right away if that's something that would be of interest to you. And finally, if you are a vendor who would like to present on the MegaCast or an EcoCast, that's something we'd definitely like to discuss with you, and you can reach out to us at sales@actualtechmedia.com, and we can get that conversation started. Okay, everybody, it's been awesome. Thanks for joining us on today's MegaCast event. Make sure you grab the resources in the handouts section. Make sure that you ask any questions you've got that were not answered in the Q&A panel. We'll be around for a little bit here, just answering any last-minute questions. And then watch out for the recording that's going to come later. And again, make sure and pop over to events.actualtechmedia.com to see what else is coming up. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.